During a family dinner, my husband slapped my sisters, but I confronted him, and he played the victim, so I left him and cut ties with both of them. 2 years later, he showed up at my door, begging for forgiveness, expecting me to fix their mess. It was supposed to be a quiet, simple family dinner, a gathering that would mark the end of the week. The kind of evening where laughter filled the air, and the stress of work or life in general was put aside, if only for a few hours. My sister, Mia, was in town for the weekend, and my husband, Mark, had insisted on hosting. He always had a way of making everything seem perfect on the surface. But, of course, nothing is ever as perfect as it seems. I had just finished setting the table when Mia walked in. She looked stunning, as usual, her long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders in waves, her eyes sparkling with mischief. She had that carefree aura about her, the kind of person who always seemed to get what she wanted. We exchanged a hug, and I couldn't help but smile, glad to have her around. Mark is in the kitchen, trying to burn something, as usual, I joked, walking toward the dining room. Mia chuckled. He always gets the cooking part wrong, doesn't he? I nodded. You know it. But I'll save the day, as always. We laughed, but deep down, I was a little apprehensive. There was something about Mark's behavior recently that I couldn't put my finger on. It wasn't overt, nothing obvious, but I could feel a distance between us. Like he was pulling away, and I couldn't understand why. As we entered the kitchen, Mark was standing by the stove, stirring something that smelled like it was on the verge of burning. His face lit up when he saw Mia. "Hey, beautiful," he said with a grin, his eyes lingering on her longer than necessary. Mia grinned back. "Looks like dinner's going to be interesting tonight." Mark laughed and slapped her on the back, his hand lingering on her waist. I felt a flicker of discomfort in my chest, but I shrugged it off. It was nothing. Just a friendly gesture. The dinner went on as planned. We ate, talked, and joked. Mark seemed unusually attentive to Mia, offering her more wine than I thought was necessary, laughing a little too hard at her jokes. I could tell something was off. It wasn't like him to behave this way, especially not with my sister. After dessert, when the table was cleared, we moved to the living room. Mark and Mia sat together on the couch, their heads close, whispering to each other. I excused myself to the bathroom, trying to shake the nagging feeling in my gut. But when I came back, everything changed. As I stepped into the living room, I froze. Mark was sitting behind Mia, his hand on her waist, and his fingers had moved lower, way too low. His hand was resting on her rear end, and as I walked in, he gave it a quick, casual slap. I stood there, my heart racing, trying to process what I had just seen. My body felt like it was in shock, unable to move, unable to speak. Mia didn't seem to mind, laughing as she leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. But I couldn't tear my eyes away from the scene before me. I had never felt more betrayed in my life. "Mark!" I finally managed to croak, my voice shaking. "What the hell is going on?" Both of them turned to look at me. Mark quickly removed his hand from Mia's side, looking startled, but then his face shifted into something else, something defensive, something I had never seen before. "Relax, babe," Mark said, his voice casual, as if nothing had happened. "It was just a joke. Mia's like a sister to me. You know that." I couldn't believe my ears. "A joke? Are you serious right now?" Mia's smile faded, and she sat up straighter, clearly uncomfortable now. She avoided my gaze, her hands nervously folding in her lap. I could tell she wasn't as carefree as she had been a moment ago. But it didn't matter. The damage had been done. "I saw what you did, Mark. You slapped her ass. How is that just a joke? And don't you dare try to make me the crazy one here." Mark's expression hardened, and for the first time that evening, I saw the anger flicker in his eyes. "You're overreacting. Mia's family. It was nothing." I felt my hands trembling as I stood there, trying to control the surge of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. No. You don't get to disrespect me like this. Not in my own home, not with my sister. Mark scoffed, rolling his eyes. You're being ridiculous. I didn't do anything wrong. You always overthink everything. That was it. I couldn't stay in that house for another second. I turned to Mia, who was sitting there, looking guilty and uncomfortable. You, too. I don't want to see either of you right now. Mia's eyes widened in surprise, but I didn't care. I grabbed my purse, stormed out of the living room, and headed straight for the door. I didn't look back. That night, I packed my things and left our home. I stayed at a friend's place for a while, not knowing what to do or where to go. I felt like my entire world had just collapsed. Mark tried to call and text, but I ignored him. Mia, too. I couldn't bring myself to speak to either of them. The betrayal was too much. It wasn't just about what Mark had done, it was the way he tried to turn everything around on me, making me feel like I was the one at fault. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Mark and Mia tried reaching out again and again. There were flowers, letters, and even a few desperate phone calls. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. Every time I thought about the way Mark had dismissed my feelings, my anger flared up all over again. The guilt gnawed at me, too. I wondered if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's hand on Mia's waist, the slap that had shattered something inside me. It wasn't just the physical act, it was the complete lack of respect for me, for my boundaries, for our marriage. 2 years later. It had been 2 years since that night. 2 years since I had cut ties with Mark and Mia. I had rebuilt my life, found new friends, and even started therapy to help me deal with the hurt and confusion. But one cold evening, just as I was about to settle in for the night, there was a knock on my door. I opened it cautiously, my heart racing. And there he was, Mark. His face was haggard, his hair unkempt, and his eyes were red. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low and pleading. I stepped back, surprised. "What are you doing here?" I know it's been a long time, but I need you to listen," Mark said, his voice breaking. "I messed up, okay? I made a huge mistake, and I don't know what to do anymore. Please, just hear me out." I folded my arms across my chest, staring at him. "You think you can just show up here after 2 years and expect me to fix things?" "I don't expect you to fix anything," Mark said quickly, desperation in his voice. "I just want you to know how sorry I am. I've lost everything, and I realize now that I never should have done that. Not to you, not to Mia, not to anyone." I felt a lump form in my throat, but I refused to let him see how much it still hurt. "You didn't just lose me, Mark. You lost my trust. And trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild." He nodded, his face pleading. "I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. But I need you to understand that I was wrong. And I'm sorry for everything. For what I did to you, and for how I treated you." I looked at him for a long moment, weighing my options. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface. But the sadness, the sadness, was overwhelming. "I don't think I can ever forgive you," I said quietly. "Not for what you did to me. Not for what you did to Mia." Mark's face fell. "Please, I just want to make it right." I shook my head. "It's too late for that." And with that, I closed the door. It was over. For good this time. The years that followed were about reclaiming myself, about learning to live without the man I had once loved, and the sister I had once trusted. The betrayal had shattered something inside me, but in time, I had healed. I learned to stand on my own, to find my own happiness. I met new people who respected me, who valued my worth, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was truly living again. The pain of the past never fully disappeared, but it no longer controlled me. And though Mark and Mia would never understand the depth of the hurt they caused, I knew I had made the right choice. Some things, once broken, can never be fixed.